and good morning. I'm Angel. Welcome to Healthy in Heart, and I hope you are healthy in heart, mind, body, and soul today. I've got a boy on my lap right here trying to photobomb. This is Kirby. All right, have a seat, buddy. So this video has been a long time coming. Todd and I have been trying to get it videoed for about six months. Well, no, probably about 8 months. We just, when we get our schedules together, it's just we have other priorities to do because he wanted to do this with me. But here we go. So these are the things that we learned in 2021 about the garden, and what we're going to do different this season. Some of them didn't happen, just to let you know. Okay, so the first lesson we learned last year was, even when you plant your crops out, you've done everything, it's after the frost date, it can still frost. And not only that, we did our best last year to cover the plants because we had a 2-day cold streak come through, and we did our best to cover the plants, and they were covered really well. They fared well the first day. The second day, they froze. And it wiped out the whole garden. That was heartbreaking, and it was a huge monetary loss because we were not yet starting plants from seeds. So yeah, even when you do your best to protect your plants, sometimes it's just not enough. And the thing with gardening is you're going to have screw-ups, you're going to have mistakes, you're going to have things that go wrong. That's just part of dealing with nature and the weather and deer and other animals. There's just going to be times when things just don't go the way you anticipate. And you've got to be okay with that, because while it was heartbreaking, and I did want to cry for a little while, but you still have to be okay with it and move past it, because you don't want that to paralyze you into not, don't do that, into not planting a garden. So, and I do have a list, several pages here. One thing we learned is we don't have enough land right here. We're on a 1/4 acre inside city limits. We don't have enough land here to be completely self-sufficient with our food. We are vegan, whole food, plant-based, so we don't eat animal products. We don't eat dairy and eggs. Anything that comes from something with a face, we don't eat it. So that was so we don't have to worry about having land for animals, but even so, having most of, all of our food being plant food, coming from plants, we don't have enough acreage here to actually be fully self-sufficient. We just don't. It's, it's just, sometimes you just have to look at your situation, either accept it as it is, or take steps to change it. And that's one thing that we're doing. We're trying to get the house paid off, and we still owe a little bit on his truck, and my student loans. Once those are paid off, we are probably going to look for another place with more land after we've sunk about $40,000 into this house. But that's neither here nor there. So, knowing that we're going to be moving again in about 2 years, roughly, give or take, we don't know for sure, but we're probably going to be moving. We decided to go ahead and plant the trees into the ground so that we can pay it forward to whoever purchases the house from us. And so that is what we decided to do, and that's what we did, or what we're working on doing. There's still a lot of plants back there in tubs and buckets. It'll also make it easier for us to move. So many phone calls today. So because we have limited space on which to grow, and when we move, we're not going to have a huge expanse of land either. You know, it's going to still be small, but, you know, larger than here. You know, I'm wanting at least maybe 2 acres. But we know that we don't have enough space here to plant everything that we want to, because I would love to expand and do different peppers and different tomatoes, but we don't have the space. So in lieu of that, we decided to plant the trees and the plants that we know we like, our favorites, and that's what we did. And just limiting like experimental things to 1 or 2 plants, or, you know, limiting the space that we use for different new crops, new varieties. So basically, we're just not wasting any space on foods that we don't know if we like them or not, and we don't, you know, because if we don't like it, then it would be a waste. So we have a lot of projects planned for the backyard. As you can see, we're going to be building a greenhouse. We're going to be rebuilding the gazebo. We're going to be putting up some fencing to kind of deter deer and stray animals and stray people sometimes walk through the yard. So we're going to be putting up fences to deter that. I also have some more plants that need to go in the ground. We've already done a couple things as far as that. We're also going to be building a patio at the back of the kitchen so that we can actually go out and enjoy our outside living area. I would like to have a fire pit or some type of grill type thing out there. We have a portable grill out there now, but I'm talking about brick and mortar. So you'll just have to stay tuned to see what projects we have planned and what we get done. So we learned biblically you're supposed to let fruit trees rest for the first 3 years and not harvest them, because the first 2 years are for the plant and the 3rd year is Yahweh's. Now, I don't know what you're supposed to do with the food that goes to Yahweh, because there's no temple right now, and we are not part of a congregation, so we haven't worked that out yet. A lot of the plants that we bought are already 2 years old, so that if they put on fruit, they're not going to put on much fruit. So there was that. That was a little thing that we learned. So we also learned that you can buy plants from the nursery or Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you get your plants from, and they can already have a fungus that causes fruit rot, and you can then introduce that fungus into your garden. So there are steps you'll need to take to fix that situation as far as, you know, getting rid of the fungus. We had a huge issue with blossom end rot last year because of that. We also learned that cedar chips are a really good thing to use to prevent that fungi. So we used cedar chips in one of our beds, and it wasn't until later in the season that we got the fungal issue. But cedar chips are really good for, you know, just the bags of cedar chips if you can't buy it. Pet bedding. That's what I used in one because I had it, didn't know what to do with it, so I just used it in there, and it actually turned out to be a good thing. So as far as preserving foods, we learned that banana peppers, jalapeno peppers, pepperoni peppers are really great when they're pickled. Very, very good. We also learned that the pepperoni peppers that you get in the store, the poblano peppers, the Cubadel peppers, if they're green, they're not ripe. And when you let them ripen on the vine, it may take a little longer before you can harvest, but they taste so much better. We learned that we need to plan better. Now, we did plan better this year, but there's still a lesson that I needed to learn there as far as what can be planted where. But as far as planning, we did plan better. We learned that we need to make a larger area, or dedicate a larger area for the plants that we really, for the fruits that we really love, like Fresno peppers. And that even though you can, with the beds that we have, plant them a lot closer together. I mean, there was enormous amount of plants that we planted. I mean, 16 to 20 plants per 3x3 bed. They did great, but I think they might do a little better if we have less plants, and that's what we're trying this year. Less plants per bed, so that they're not quite sharing quite so much nutrition. And so we'll give that a try. I'm not sure if it's going to be a true trial, because I do have the cabbages, the cauliflower, and the broccoli planted in there with them. So, but those are coming out soon, and actually starting to come out now. Actually, they have been coming out. So those have been coming out, and they'll continue to come out, and we'll continue to feed the beds and see if that makes a difference. So strategic shading is really good, so that your plants are not blasted with the summer sun. And because if they are, they dry out a lot faster. You get sun scald. And so we had the trees cut out. Was it last year? Last year, yeah. And we are really missing those trees. The shade provided. Plus, if you have strategic shade, you actually have more time that you can be out there and doing work in the garden that you are not being run inside because of the heat. That's one issue I've been having this year. So nature likes to keep the ground covered. It's kind of like skin, like ours. It protects our body. So covering protects the ground. Keeping the ground covered with mulch or strategic planting, group planting, helps massively with weed control. I mean, massively. It is huge, huge deal with preventing weeds, reducing weeds. There were a couple beds back there that were insane last year because they had so many weeds. And there's one weed that it grows, it will sprout along the root, so it'll put up another plant. It's not a rhizome plant, type plant, but it's a weed, and it will take over the bed. So I had issues with that last year, which has actually been remedied with the cabbages and cauliflower and broccoli, because they are such big plants. They provide a lot of shade. And that's what I was thinking, right? But the only problem is they also shade out the plants that we want. So, you know, lesson learned. And I hope you don't think I'm being blasé or just kind of, I don't care, because I do care. I'm just trying not to be emotionally attached to the outcome. We learned that radish seeds are better than the radishes, in our opinion, and they're amazing raw or in stir fries. So we really enjoyed those last year. I did not plant any radishes this year, which is unfortunate, but I didn't. So radishes also love hunkering down in the heat of the summer in the understory of taller plants like habaneros. It really did like that. And they got huge. We also learned that tomato hornworms are do not discriminate. They will also eat your pepper plants. My guess is they'll probably eat eggplants and things like that as well. I don't know how many hornworms I picked off of my pepper plants. Okay, while squash looked beautiful on the trellis, they died faster, and they were attacked harder by the squash bugs and squash vine borers that way, in my opinion, than growing them along the ground. We used to grow them when I was little, I remember, and they would just sprawl along the ground, and then they would root wherever they touched the ground. And we didn't have problems with dieback as far as the vine borers. We lived a little farther away from here, but they still had vine borers and the squash bugs. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, also the squash bugs and vine borers do not discriminate with melons. They also attacked my cucumbers last year. Possibly any other vining vegetable, it could potentially be at risk also. I'm not sure. I do know that it did attack my cucumbers. They did. So one thing that people talk about, people preserve the fruit, right? But another thing you need to preserve is the seeds. Seeds are very important if you want to be self-sufficient, is saving those seeds, especially the varieties that you really like. Now, we had at the beginning of spring last year when we put the pepper plants out the second time, we had issues with the pepper plants starting to turn yellow. And, you know, we were on YouTube, we were online, and we were looking for how, you know, what caused it and how to fix the issue. Well, a lot of YouTubers said that once it's yellow, it's dead. Well, for pepper plants, that's not necessarily the case, because we added nitrogen to the soil and they green back up, they grew, and they become very heavy producers. With the exception to the sweet peppers. Those flunked last year. Okay, you buy the mineral compositions, the NPK formula, I think that's what it's called. Nitrogen, potassium, calcium. So those are the three that are sold mostly together in various ratios. But here's the thing, your plants need more nutrients than that. So the best way to give that is to chop and drop. You can also use worm castings, which is what I'm trying in the bed this year. The worm bins in the center of the bed. So far, I'm not having any issues with gnats or anything like that, or critters getting in the beds. Of course, I do keep a brick on it, and it does latch. So one thing we learned was that worm castings are great for eliminating blossom end rot, which is why I put them in the bed. And we actually learned that from a long-term gardener on YouTube. We learned that functionality isn't always pretty. We ended up having to put some netting around the tomatoes to keep critters out of the tomatoes, so they wouldn't steal the green tomatoes before they had started to ripe. So sometimes functionality trumps aesthetics. Drought coupled with high heat can severely hinder garden growth and production, even when you water every single day. Here again, strategic shading is very important. You can also get shade cloth. I do have some. I just have not figured a way to incorporate it out there yet, just with the way our bed is configured. But shading can be really important when it comes to you know, them not drying out, because they do lose moisture through their leaves as well. So here we go back to biblically. There is a former and a latter rain. You know, you've heard growing up, April showers bring May flowers. Well, there is also latter rains that come after the dog days are over. Which allowed us to have an even heavier harvest towards the fall than the former, the spring rains did. So that was really cool to watch. How the pepper plants just looked like they were petered out. They were done for. They were, you know, they'd already produced all they were going to produce, and they were heavy produced already. But once we got the latter rains, the fall rains, they just put on more flowers and produced even heavier. I mean, it was amazing to watch. Along those same lines, a good heavy rain can make the plants you thought were almost done start producing new flowers and fruits. And the rainwater seems to be better at helping the flowers, the fruits produce. So knowing that the plants prefer rainwater over city water, which is heavily chlorinated, heavily fluorinated, it makes rainwater collection kind of necessary, or at least very beneficial to your plants, especially for those times when the rains don't come. Okay, so raised beds are wonderful, but they also present a problem in supplemental watering and setting up a watering system that you don't trip over or leave puddles of water everywhere to breed mosquitoes. And we are still working on figuring out a solution to this issue, which we have. Aside from digging and burying the lines, which I don't want to do because we have black clay soil. It's not fun to dig in. But we're still looking into trying to work out a solution to that issue. So, something else that's new. Peppers will ripen on the counter after they've been picked. We had, at the end of the season, right before we had the first frost of the season, we harvested everything and brought it in. And when it sat on the counter, waiting for me to process it, the green peppers turned and ripened on the counter, just like tomatoes do. So that was something I'd not even heard of. And so that was something new that we learned. Peppers are so much easier to core than I originally thought. I'll put a link of that below. It's also important to make note of how the water flows through the land. We've always had like rivers of water when it floods, because the clay soil does not soak the water up when it rains. It just sits there in puddles, like marshy type situation. And so when it rains heavy, when you get those early in the latter rains, sometimes you have to use ditching and other drainage solutions to keep from flooding out your gardens and your walking paths and your buildings and things like that. So we had to re-level the house last year because the rain had been getting underneath the house and had shifted the foundations in some places. So we had it re-leveled and fixed the issue. And but I did notice at the spring this year that we had, whereas last year we had water running in from our back neighbor's house to where they redid their land, they sloped it toward our house. So we had water running down towards the garden shed. This year, it is running from my neighbor here, my neighbor to the side. It's running in from that direction underneath. It's going right over where our garden bed is that we're getting ready to put in the ground. And we're going to heavy mulch that. So I'm hoping that keeps it. He's going to do some stuff to try to keep it from washing away. But that's something we're going to have to address because that's also where our greenhouse is. But the water's been running under the long planter, along between the planters, and off to the end where we have that mushy spot, the spot that just stays wet, which we're also going to be using some mulch to help with that as well. So just stay tuned. We're gonna have another list next year. Hopefully we'll get it up a lot sooner than this one did because the season this year is almost over, but or at least halfway over. And I'm just now getting this one out. Maybe next time Todd will have time to do it with me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any ideas for solutions, I'd love to hear it. Drop them below in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Yahweh bless you and keep you and give you shalom. Until next time. Yah bless.